So hi everyone. So today I will explain about the bearings. Okay. So first of all, what is the use of bearings? Okay. So bearing is a machine element. So which is support to the another rotating machine element. Okay. So bearing is in a circular shape. Let us consider in a circular shape. Okay. So this one is bearing. Okay. Bearing is a machine element. So which is support to the another rotating machine element. Okay, so that is known as bearing. Okay, so bearing, classification of bearings. It permits a relative motion so between the journal and bearing. Okay, so what is the meaning of journal? Okay, so journal means, okay, so which amount of portion of the shaft, okay, inside of the bearing, so that is known as journal. Okay, so let us consider bearing. The next one is a journal or shaft. Okay, the shaft is rotated inside of the bearing. Okay, under cases. Okay, so the rubbing takes place between the shaft and the bearing surfaces. Under cases, okay, some amount of power losses due to frictional resistance and also occurs. Okay, so wear condition and also some heat is generated. Okay, so how to overcome these conditions? By applying the lubricants. Okay, classification of bearings. Okay, so basically the bearings are classified into two types. Okay, so what is the first one? So depends upon load to be acted. Second one is depends upon nature of contact. Okay, so in this classification also divided into two types. So what is the first one? Thrust bearings, then radial bearings. Okay, so in this classification, so divided into two types: sliding contact bearings, also known as journal bearings. Second one is a rolling contact bearings. Okay, so in rolling contact bearings, so just divided into two types. So what is the first one? Ball bearings. Second one is a roller bearings. Okay, so in ball bearings, so divided into, okay, so deep four types. So first one is a deep groove, okay, single row and double row ball bearings. Then second one is self-aligning bearings. Third one is angular contact ball bearings. So fourth one is filling notch bearings. So these are all so under the ball bearings. Okay, then second one is a roller bearings. Okay, so roller bearings are divided into four groups. That means four types. So cylindrical, then spherical, then needle, then tapered. Okay, so this is the complete classification of bearings. Okay, so in this video, so I will explain about the sliding contact bearings. So after completion of sliding contact bearings, so I will explain each and every everything. Okay, so rolling contact bearings. Okay, so first of all, already you know what is the bearing. So bearing is a machine element, so which is support to the another rotating machine element. Okay, so whenever the shaft is rotated inside of the bearing, some amount of power to be losses due to some frictional resistance and wear condition also occurs. Then next one is some heat is generated. So how to overcome these conditions? By applying the lubricants. So this is the classification of bearings. Okay, then so in this video I will explain about the sliding contact bearings. Okay. The next, now I explain about the thrust bearings. Next, radial bearings. What is the definition of sliding contact bearing? So what is the definition of rolling contact bearings? Then types of sliding contact bearings. Okay, so the next one is classification of lubrications. Okay, so already you know the complete classification of bearings. Okay, so in this classification, so what is the first one? Depends upon load to be acted. So under classification, so divided into two types. So what is the first one? Thrust bearing. Then second one is radial bearings. Okay. So what is the meaning of radial bearings? Radial bearings. So what is the definition of thrust bearings? Thrust bearings. Okay. So these two are, so depends upon type of load to be acted. Okay. So in radial bearings, the load is acted. Okay. The load is acted perpendicular to the moving element. Perpendicular to the moving element. Okay. In thrust bearing, the load is act along the axis. Okay. So this is the definition of radial bearings. So this is the definition of thrust bearings. Okay. Radial bearing means the load is act perpendicular to the moving element. Okay. Thrust bearing means the load is act along the axis. Okay. So this is the definition of radial bearings. Okay. So we will see. So what is the diagram of radial bearings? Okay. This is the shaft. This is the shaft. The next, this one is moving element. Okay. So moving element. So this is the diagram of radial bearings. This is the diagram of radial bearings. This one is moving element. This one is fixed element. But what is the definition of radial bearings? Okay. The load is act perpendicular to the moving element. Okay. So this load, this is the load. The load is act. Okay. So this is the moving element. The load is act perpendicular to the moving element. So that is known as radial bearings. Okay. Then next, similarly, so thrust bearings. Okay. So what is the diagram of thrust bearings? Then shaft. Then shaft. Then shaft. Okay. The next one is, okay, the next. So in this case, the load is act along the axis. Okay. The load is act along the axis. So that is known as thrust bearings. Okay. So these are the diagrams of radial bearings. The next one is thrust bearings. Okay. So then next, third one is, so what is the meaning of sliding contact bearings? Okay. So sliding contact bearing means, okay, the shaft or journal sliding takes place along the surface of a bearing. So that is known as sliding contact bearings. Okay. Then next one is rolling contact bearings. So what is the definition of rolling contact bearings? Okay. So rolling contact bearing. Okay. What is the definition of rolling contact bearings? Rolling contact bearing. Okay. The next topics are, so first one is slipper or guided bearing definition. Okay, that means what is the definition of slipper or guided bearings? Okay. Then second one is sleeve bearings. Okay. So third one is full journal bearing. Okay, so then fourth one is partial journal bearing, partial journal bearing, partial journal bearing. Okay, then so finally fifth one is fitted bearings. Finally fifth one is fitted bearings. Okay, so these are all very important. Okay, so first one is, so what is the definition of slipper or guided bearings? Okay, so these are all, so depends upon sliding action. Okay, in slipper or guided bearings, the sliding, okay, action is in a straight line, so that is known as slipper or guided bearings. Okay, so what is the definition of slipper? Okay, the sliding action is guided in a straight line. Okay, so that is known as slipper or guided bearings. Okay, so what is the definition of sleeve bearings? Okay, the sliding action is the circumference of a circle or arc, so that is known as sleeve bearings. Okay, so what is the definition of slipper? Slipper means the sliding action is guided in a straight line. Okay, so that is known as slipper or guided bearings. Then second one is sleeve bearings. Okay, the sliding action, okay, along the circumference of a circle or in a arc. Okay, so that type of bearings is known as sleeve bearings. Okay, then next one is full journal bearing, then partial journal bearing. So next one is fitted bearings. So these three are depends upon angle of contact. Angle of contact. Okay, so these are all, so depends upon angle of contact. Okay, then so I will explain the full journal bearing. Okay, so this is the diagram of journal. The next one is bearing. Okay, so this one is bearing. Then journal. The next one is bearing. Okay, so what is the definition of full journal bearing? Okay, the angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 360 degrees, so that is known as full journal bearing. Okay, then second one is partial journal bearing. Okay, so same as it is, that means similarly the angle of contact, so this is the diagram of journal, then this one is bearing. Okay, so this one is bearing, then journal, next this one is bearing, this one is bearing. Okay, so next partial journal bearing means the angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 120 degrees, so that is known as partial journal bearing. Okay, then so fifth one is fitted bearings. So what is the meaning of fitted bearing? Fitted bearing also, okay, the angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 120 degrees. Okay, so these two are angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 120 degrees. Okay, in partial and fitted bearings. But what is the difference between partial journal bearing and fitted bearings? Okay, so in partial journal bearing, the diameter of bearing is greater than the diameter of journal. Okay, the small letter represented bearings, then capital letter is represented, the small letters are represented journals. Okay, the capital letters represent the bearing. Okay, the capital D is greater than small d, that means the bearing diameter is greater than the journal diameter in partial journal bearings. Okay, in case of fitted bearings, the diameter of the bearing is equal to the diameter of the journal. So that is the difference between partial journal bearing and fitted bearings. Okay, so what is the definition of slipper? Okay, the sliding action is guided in a straight line, so that is known as slipper. Sleeve bearing means the sliding action, okay, circumference of a circle, okay, or in a arc, that is known as sleeve bearings. Okay, so then next, full journal bearing, partial journal bearing, fitted bearings. So these three are depends upon angle of contact. Then full journal bearing means the angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 360 degrees. Okay, in partial journal bearings, the angle of contact journal and bearing is 120. Fitted bearing also, the angle of contact between the journal and bearing is 120 degrees, but difference is diameters. In partial, D greater than small d, then D equal to D. So capital D means diameter of bearing, small d means dia of journal or shaft. Okay, so these are the definitions also, so very important. Okay, the next topic is classification of lubrications. Okay, so what is the next topic? Classification of lubrications. Okay, thickness of lubrications. Okay, so what are the classifications? Then first one is thick film lubrication, then second one is thin film lubrication, third one is zero film lubrication, then fourth one is hydrostatic lubrications. Okay, so these are all depends upon thickness of film, oil film. Okay, then first one is thick film, then second one is thin film. Okay, so thick film bearings, thin film bearings, third one is zero film bearings. Okay, so fourth one is hydrostatic. Okay, then fourth one is hydrostatic or external pressurized lubricated bearings. Lubricated bearings. Okay, then so what are the definitions of thick film, then thin film bearings, then zero film, then next one is hydrostatic or external pressurized lubrication bearings. Okay, then next one is hydrodynamic lubricated bearings. Okay, so thick film. So what is the definition of thick film? Okay, the thick film bearings are those in which the working surfaces are completely separated by the lubricants. Okay, lubricants. Second one is thin film. Okay, so thin film means the working surfaces okay, the working surfaces are partially separated by the lubricants. So that is known as thin film. Okay, so thick film means completely separated. Okay, so then thin film means so partially separated. Then next one is zero film means okay, the bearings operates. Okay, so without any lubricants, so that is known as zero film. Okay, so without any lubricants, without any lubricants. Okay, so that is known as zero film. Okay, so thick film means the working surfaces are completely separated by the lubricants. So that means, so let us consider bearing. The next one is shaft. Okay, the shaft is rotated inside of the bearing, so without contact. Okay, so that means thick film. Okay, so there is no touch between the, okay, so journal and bearing, so that is known as thick film. The thick film bearings also known as hydrostatic bearings. So hydrostatic bearing means there is no touch each other, so that means there is no contact between the journal and bearing, so that is known as thick film. Okay, then thin film means, so partially contact between the, so journal and bearing. Okay, working surfaces means journal and bearing. Okay, then zero film means, so without any lubricants, the bearings will operate without any lubricants. Then finally hydrostatic or external pressurized lubricated bearings. Already you know the statics and dynamics. Okay, so statics means constant. Okay, the load is constant. So what is the definition of hydrostatics? Okay, the hydrostatic bearings are those which can support steady loads. Okay, so in this case, okay, the steady loads acting on that bearings. Okay, so without any relative motion between the, so journal and bearing. Okay, so how to create the relative motion between the journal and bearings? Okay, by applying the external pressurized lubricated bearings. Okay, so then this one is bearing, then journal. Okay, so connected to one pump, this one is pump. Okay, so this pump is connected to oil sump. Okay, so this one is pump. So constant load acting on that bearing. Okay, so that there is no relative motion between the bearing and journal. Okay, so how to create the relative motion? By applying the external pressurized lubricants. Okay, so this is the diagram of hydrostatic lubricated bearings. Okay, so we are, so apply the external pressurized oils, lubricants. Okay, under cases some relative motion created inside of the bearings. Okay, so these are the different types of, okay, oil film thickness, oil films.